One thing I think people don't understand sometimes is the difference in the brain and the mind. I'll guarantee you 99.9% of people, if you said point to your mind, they're going to go here. And I understand that not only is the mind in us, but we're in it. We call it many different names, but it is the mind.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I'm your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing, and I commune with another incredible being that is basically what I consider just a frequency that has had me vibrating since he said hello. I want to welcome to the podcast David Hulse. He's a spiritual guide, but not in definition. Humility is something that he's very familiar with, but I'm just talking about the juice right here, which I'm experiencing. So I'm just very grateful for you to come and join us on the podcast today. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you today. Looking forward to it.
I am so looking forward to it. Why don't we start with a brief abbreviation of how you got to this very moment?
Well, very young, actually. I had an experience at 17 years old, believe it or not, that changed everything for me. Today, looking back, I would call it a moment of gnosis in which information came into my humanity that I would have never thought of. And that's how I explain the difference between spiritual thought and human thought. A spiritual thought is a thought that the human would have never thought of. And therefore, the brain is not the source, but there's a higher source. So I had that experience at 17. Now, I come from a very fundamentalist Pentecostal background, which I used to try to hide, but I don't anymore because it was a wonderful space for me to learn the freedom of myself in and not get locked into dogma and doctrine and all of that. So I found a path of spirit, being spirit guided, spirit led. And I think that started back then. So I've been through many, many different kinds of dimensions, let's say, but I immediately found myself innately becoming a researcher. I just didn't want to take what everybody was saying to me outside of myself. And my own aunt was my pastor, and my uncle was the overseer of the denomination. And they found me very rebellious because I kept asking questions. Why? Why? And one of the first things that came to my mind that I call a gnosis thought was nobody in the Bible spoke English. What did they say? And so, because I was so taught to stay away from Eastern teaching of any kind, that it was very, cultish and very bad and whatever. And I thought, well, who do you think all these people in the Bible came from? They're all from the East. So why don't we? So I started studying Hebrew and Aramaic and Greek and all of that kind of thing to kind of see what they were saying. So I started talking more on the definitions from those languages than I did from the English language. And I found an audience for that. And people began to resonate with what I was saying. And that's been the path for a long time. In 89, I had what I call a transmission experience from a higher dimension. And that's when I kind of lost all my belief system. And I lost my belief in God. But the thing was, Sam, I thought that I lost God, but I lost the belief in God. Or what do you want to call this thing called God? I'm not hung up on this word God so much, but at that time, that's the word that I was using. And I just discovered through that experience that I was losing a belief system that I'd made God. I was worshiping a belief system. And I think sometimes belief systems can hold us if we don't take once in a while to step out of ourselves and review our belief systems and do an upgrade on our belief systems. So many people are so caught into belief systems that they don't grow anymore. And I think that's what religion has done. And when I say organized, man-made religion, it's kind of trapped people into a one way of looking at something while we all wait with great anticipation of the next trend. What's the new car? What's the new fashion? That we don't do that in religion. But what's the new thing coming from spirit? What is the next dimension that's coming? And people reject that because they've gotten so caught. So I wanted to find a path for people that was active, that was challenging, that was corrective. And that's where I kind of ended up coming that direction. So I started studying things like A Course in Miracles. Marianne Williamson was a great part in the 80s for me because it used the language of my religion, but it used it in a different way that I had heard before. So it became a bridge to help me, to go that direction. So this has been definitely a journey for me. It's been a journey of change, a challenge, correction, and also inspiration to me that has led me to this moment. And when I say to this moment, I mean a moment in which I don't even know what to call myself anymore. I don't know what to label myself anymore. And that's not good in the world sense because everybody wants to put you in a box of some kind. And I'm not. I'm just kind of flowing with this whole thing. And I want to say to you that anything I may say today on this podcast is not anything that is, I believe, is absolute. I believe everybody has to learn to take all the information that we give them outside of themselves, inside of themselves, and contemplate it and see if there's a resonance that awakens their own innate intelligence in them. So I'm very much into awakening, and that's the name of my academy is Spiritual Awakening, because I believe that we're kind of in a simulation of illusion and sleep. And I think we're just playing out dreams that is coming to us from our ego mind. And I think it's just time for us to wake up.
Hallelujah to that. Amen, my brother. That's what I'm
Thank you.
talking about.
All
It's
right.
like, you gravitate to what you experience as that feeling. Which
Yes.
I always tell people, if you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you are feeling. That visceral, kinesthetic, somatic response is a very indicator, the barometer that gives you your Sherlock to your Watson elementary. That's it. The simplicity of all things.
Yes.
I just love the way that you're stepping away from the absolute definition of what reality is. Furthermore, I mean, being a priest, I'm a little bit more biased because I do believe there is this onslaught of a spiritual war to separate the individual from their own knowing, which comes in the form of mind magic, in this manipulation where we have to be in the psyche, in the mental, and the mental does not mean all things are mental, as would be something more referencing a hermetic sort of perception. But you are mental, you are psyche, you are separate from this body that you perceive as the human flesh and blood, the ego looking back at you in the mirror. This is sort of like all this terminology, but to be self-realized is to actually have an experiential moment, a moment of realization right now. This is how it becomes it. Like our communion right now, this oscillating symbiotic effect of our union is being represented in the experience that we're experiencing because we're resonating. I love the way you mentioned that because you create, right, from a self-realized dualistic perspective. If someone was to try and decipher what it is that you are experiencing, is this idea that it's only an idea until otherwise noted. So it comes in the form of contemplation, as you put it, and then it turns into hope, and then it is refined as a belief system, and then realized and alchemized as a knowing through your experience, through your journey, your Gnostic journey of self-realization. What say you, my dear friend?
I say beautifully put. Well put. I love the way you're framing that and putting that, and I resonate with that very, very much. One thing I think people don't understand sometimes is the difference in the brain and the mind. I'll guarantee you 99.9% of people, if you said point to your mind, they're going to go here. And understand that not only is the mind in us, but we're in it. And we call it many different names, but it is the mind. I also think it's important that people realize that the human intellect, which is to me more of a mental masculine thing, has overtaken the wisdom of the heart, which is the feminine aspect of ourselves. Now, one of my things that I'm fairly, I think, good at, if I can say that, is taking things like the Bible and literalism and bringing it into a more metaphysical, spiritual idea. And I'll give you an example in this time of the environment we're in. There's much that's happening to bring forth the feminine right now. We're really seeing the coming forth of the feminine aspect of things. And I think that's important because I think the feminine has been so suppressed in all of us, whether we're men or women. But I think, call it the yin and the yang if you want, but it has been suppressed. And if you think about the old teaching that the man is the head of the woman and the woman should not say anything until she goes and asks her husband and all of that, if you take that out of the literalism and understand that it's an inner story about our mind, brain, and our heart intelligence. I am a heart math
Oh,
trainee.
amen to that. Amen to that.
Yes. And so we've learned that there's 40% of the same neurons in the heart that's in the brain. So it's kind of like the heart has a brain of its own and the brain has a heart of its own, but they've never been connected. And that's one thing that I love doing is helping people because knowledge to me and intellect, intellectualism, as we know, is a more strong male thing, but wisdom is a feminine thing. In fact, it is from the Greek word Sophia, in wisdom, which is, and it says, wisdom shall build the house. Now, the house to me is consciousness. So I think a new house is being built in many people, which I call a new consciousness, which is built upon ancient wisdom that has been so lost in the world and especially in the West is coming up. There's a prophecy that says in the end of the age, they call it the world, but it's the age. At the end of the age, that that we shall see the restoration of all things that have been spoken by the mouth of the prophet or the visionary. Well, to me, that's all the things that's been edited out of the indigenous people and of the old ancient. Why Gnosticism attracts me so much is because it was kind of pre-organized for Christianity was. It was a different time in which people were exploring individually. And of course, when man saw, okay, everybody's on their path toward gnosis or knowledge, let's do something about it. And let's just organize the information and we'll call them heretics, right? And so that kind of got lost. But I think there's a revival of that now with the discovery of the Nag Hammadi lost books of the Bible in 1940, 45, and all of that that's showing up again is kind of bringing back a lot of information that I think we've lost, that we really need to empower ourselves for what I call the shift into the next level of our evolution of what it means to be human.
Woo! You had me at hello. You know,
Good.
it's so synchronistic and synergized and energized, just the words that you speak, because the observer, anyone listening to this conversation, has a self-realized Gnostic knowing
Yes.
from that visceral response.
Good.
And so, you bring up a really good point, the polarizing effects of the electromagnetism that we call yin and yang, which is the decipher for a Taoist. That's the deciphering tool for this reality, this version of what we perceive as reality. You use the yin and yang as the very decipherer. So we observe reality as a contracting and expanding.
Yes.
We refer to it as a bellows. You are all things and nothing at the same time. And everyone goes, oh my goodness, my brain is going to explode, Jifu.
Oh,
And
look,
there
you
you go.
said that. Yeah.
Right. And so for a Taoist seeker, the self-evident realization is to find the center point, the vesica, between the breath in and the breath out. Is that realized? That charge you're getting right now up your spine, my friend, is that self-realization. And that truth comes from what we call the primordial mother, the Wu Ji, which is what we consider perfection, which is the evidence of the now, which is free-flowing, which comes to what we decipher from the Wu Ji, the primordial mother.
Mhm.
Perfection manifest will come in that form of synchronicity that we call Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, or more commonly, the sexy definition from Bruce Lee back in the 70s as the flow, baby, the flow. And so everyone gets all excited. That flow, that synchronistic, serendipitous now moment can be realized. You can stand here, you can sit here, you can realize as the body, as the mind, as all things, and then mysterious, magical manifestation, magic healing, all these sort of what we call supernatural things that are actually supernormal once you align yourself with that truth. Does
That's
that make sense?
exactly right. Absolutely. I believe that anything we call a miracle or supernatural is just a remembrance of something we forgot.
Right, right, and
Happened.
it's so beautiful when we hear the serenade of the beautiful silky relationship that you have with your words that transmit that. And furthermore, when you talk about, I mean, the density right now, I'm just playing with the substance because it's so palpable. That was evident from you just entering this stratosphere of interweb, and we're having this incredible communion. But this furthermore brings back that coherence that is so contemporary in the definition of how do you sync what we call the upper dantian, middle dantian, lower dantian, which is this is the light, this is the information, this is the energy from a Taoist alchemy perspective. The dantian is called the energy elixir, the field, and we acquire what we call nidan, which is energy alchemy. Furthermore, you evoke Nigong, which is internal power. So all these things become realized through a method, I think, is part of what you're speaking of, because the ancient ritual of that communion with the seeker to the knower has been lost. This relationship, and furthermore, they've been dirtying the waters through the cyclical process of human condition being spirituality, atheism, an evidence of some type of religion, which has to be separate, but it's all the same. Once you go and collect your $200, there is a point of what we consider as no return, meaning that you are now the now moment, which embodies everything. So you can, through your imperium, through your attention intention, it now becomes crystalline in this reality. It's no longer conceptual. You are using the energy potential from that perfection to create and to bring people back to that servitude, that selflessness that is realized as the now moment. That charge you're getting, we're on the gravy train, my friend. What say you on this?
Well, I love so much of what you said. It was also so stimulating and wonderful of what you said. One thing that I kind of have taught in energy work and sound and vibration to clients and to teachers that always tap into the etheric presence of the person before the physical body shows up. So I did that with you today. Within that few minutes or 20 minutes or so before, I just went into meditation and I just began to connect with what is beyond what my eyes see right now, you, the body. And I wanted us to connect at a deeper level. I call it an etheric level. And then we could come from that deeper place than just filter it through the five senses. So I said, let's go behind the veil. And
Absolutely. No,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. But I think you're right about so many people have lost their connection. By the way, I just did a talk recently on the nothing of everything. The void is the potential of everything all at the same time. And people get that and they don't get that. But those who get it understand that we're trying to say it isn't always this versus that. That's just an appearance. But when we go below, we find that everything is made of the same thing, is the same thing. And that's what we got to remember, especially in this climate we're in right now, politically in this country and around the world itself, that we have so lost the memory of our true self, which is oneself. I like to say this. I don't know how you feel about it, but I say I'm going to help you on your path to no path. I'm going to get you into awareness enough until you wake up enough to realize you never changed, you never left home, but you are still in the great mind of the universe, that which created you. And it created you whole, right? Not broken, but whole. So I would tell all my people that I've trained for the last 24 years, don't work with what's broken, work with what's whole. And you do that by removing whatever blockages, that old belief systems from maybe even lifetimes, however long back it goes, that you have given such your power away to, until they become kind of stuck energy that is not letting the chi or the key or the flow to just flow. We've lost the river of life. I love this analogy of the flow being a river. I was just recently up in the mountains of North Carolina, and I was on a river and just watching this river just beautifully flow. And it's one of the only two rivers in the world that flows north in the wrong way. They say the wrong way. But I was just thinking, stepping into that river, you're never stepping into the same river at any time, because it's in constant flow. And I think that, as you said, I think we've lost that flow,
100.
that current that will take us along, and we don't have to work so hard at it and analyze it all the time. But we
Well, that
really need to connect.
no, I agree with you 100%. It's like reunited and it feels so
So good.
good. Returning to that center point is
Mhm.
part of remembering who you are
Yes.
and not being deficient or excess. You are just the now moment. And that comes from that, as you put it, Gnostic journey, which I would parallel with the metaphysics of Taoism,
That was-
and understanding the alchemized processes, which furthermore would parallel somewhere similar to. I've never really come across anything quite as refined as an alchemical process that Taoists offer, but Rosicrucian is a very close second in that sort of etherical, as you said, the plane of possibilities within this consciousness, which resides with all possibilities that are limitless, you know. And so when you look at multi dimensions, or someone would define, you know, from a physics perspective as this reality, Taoists look at it more as a frequency. It's frequential. Everything has a frequency. So your light to wave to matter to particle realized as your attention intention, cutting from the cloth of perfection the distortion, the dukkha that my dear friend, the Buddhist monk Martin would say. He's looking for the dukkha, which creates energy potential within this electromagnetism. So that energy potential becomes realized. Energy has a vibration, has a frequency. If met with resonance, oh, yes, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. Furthermore, move out of the need to find what your value system is from a method called The Secret many years ago, and just realize the now moment is how you acquire that frequency and you hold that resonance. That's the container. That's part of the constitution of who you are, that you can maintain. You can hold that line, and that will come from your own experience, your own cultivation. What do you do with this physical substance? From a neuroplasticity perspective, you speak of heart math. It's such a great way to find that tuning fork. We synergize the dantians from the heart, the brain, the gut. These are not just conceptual things. And we realize that you can interconnect that neuroplasticity, and all of a sudden, I lead with my head 50% of the time. I get a gut feeling, I have this response. I lead with my heart, it's 20/20. These things become realized when you are able to cultivate that mastery, that method, which returns back to the ritual that you have spoken of, that is so, in my opinion, so much a welcomed path by gravitating to the Bible, gravitating to scripture, gravitating to something that can solidify. And furthermore, within that, words, numbers, letters, symbols transmute within this potential, right? Furthermore, looking at one of my favorite talking heads on epigenetics, the Keebler known, Bruce Lipton, you have that ability. You go, wow, he's so softly spoken. It's sort of it's so silky how you just merge into it. You can't help but believe whatever he's saying. And then you become realized when you start to apply it. It's like that is the self-evidence, that chemical response, from an epigenetic perspective. It's really that simple. So self-receptors within the dermal layer creates a signal, frequential signal that activates the pituitary thalamus and a pineal gland. The alchemical factory within Taoism we call the Jade Empress Palace, and that creates from that the blood culture or the culture medium, using it as a vehicle to activate and turn on and off what's internal, what's external. But you must have imperium. You must have command over that. It's only conceptual until otherwise noted. You must be able to play with the substance, and your attention intention access the 50 trillion cells we call 0.07 millivolts of electric potential. Then you start going, okay, this is real. Wow, there's no question about it. I'm listening to these guys and I am feeling into it. I don't really need to know what they're saying. I know it's true from me right here. And that's that heart center that you brought our attention to at the beginning of the conversation, how people are removed from this intuitive knowing, this truth teller, I like to call it. And furthermore, just by hearing this, we return and we feel into it. What say you on that, my dear friend?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned epigenetics. I think that was a great game changer for a lot of us who had bought into the old, more Newtonian, old way of looking at things as being set in stone and can't be changed. And now we know that. And also neuroplasticity has also proved that we can change things at the cellular level, right? So I became interested in DNA several years ago. I was in meditation. I just felt like something was trying to get through to me. So I kind of closed myself off from everything. And I heard the words formed in my consciousness, deoxyribonucleic acid. I didn't know what that meant, but I kind of did find out it was DNA, of course, it was a name. And I knew that there was something there that I was to be a part of. And I didn't know what it was. Now, this was before Bruce Lipton and before the words epigenetics ever came along, that I was getting this knowing that I needed to delve more into what is in the DNA that has been closed off or needs to be reopened in some way. So I did, as the universe would do, found someone who was teaching DNA activation. And I went out and took those lessons and started going around the country doing DNA activation. And the thing that was interesting about that, son, was that it introduced me by teaching us to use sound and vibration to activate the double helix that was not being used. We only use what, 3%, according to Carl Sagan. So that means we're what, 97% junk DNA. Well, there's treasures in the junk these days. And so I was very interested in how to do that. And they taught us to use certain sounds and vibrations that they had put together. And that opened the door for me about moving into the world of vibration and sound healing. And so I began to really open up to that idea. So I think that, in fact, right now I'm studying what is called the secret language of the DNA. And this is science has found that there is a secret language in the DNA that is waking up. And I believe it's going to be a phenomenon. It has started mostly in New Zealand and Australia and that part of the world called light language. And I think I'm going to jump in that river, flow with it, and see where that takes me. That there is a language within the DNA that is a pure light language that is awakening in people, that is going to help us to the next level of our conscious evolution that I think we're on the threshold of at this particular time. But I begin to understand that we needed to activate parts of ourself that we have forgotten and we've detached from. And then the ego part of the belief system says, if you don't have it, you lack it. So we believe in a belief of lack, right? And then the ego's next belief system is I'm not you, you're not me, which it proves by using body identification, race, gender, so on and so forth, because that's where we differ the most. So we have learned how to buy into a belief in separation that never happened. Separation never happened in the reality. It's happening in the dream. It's happening in the illusion. And that's what I believe people are waking up from, is from this illusion that we've tried to fix. And I think that's why even a lot of modalities, and I've been in a lot of modalities, but none of them has really done what they said it was going to do. It's always fallen short a little bit, but that's good because that kept me on the research and on open to not get stuck somewhere on, oh, this is the right one, this is the only one that's right. So I've been able to experience all these different, whether it's Reiki or whatever, they all have a good place, but they're not the thing that we're looking for, but they're steps along the way. And I'm still on those steps because I don't think there's any truth out here that is the capital T truth. I think the truth. And I'd like to share with you that I spent a lot of time trying to find the right religion, the right church, the right belief system that was the truth. And every time that I thought I found one, oh, this is what I've been looking for. This is it. I would find more information. I'd go, no, there's more than that. So I never found the truth in religions of man or even schools of thought outside of in the world. So in great meditation one time, in contemplation, because I wanted to know what's the truth. Now, I'm going to use my Bible background here to explain this, but it's a story. And it's the story of Yeshua, the teacher, standing before Pilate, the great powers to be. So forget the figures there, but realize what we're talking about metaphysically here. And Pilate said to him, what is the truth? Now, I would have expected him to have his philosophy, his belief system, his theology down, but he didn't say anything. But nothing he said was the answer. And the answer was, I'm standing in the truth of myself. I am the truth. And that's when everything changed for me, that I stopped searching for my truth. I am my truth. And then I tell people, once you find out your true identity, everything else is entertainment. Enjoy the journey. But the journey will never take you to the truth until you find who you are. And I like that. I know it's been overplayed, but this I am thing, but it is very powerful words. When you think that everybody, no matter what label they buy into, starts with I am. Whether I am a born again Christian or I am an atheist or I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican or I am this, we all come from that sacred point in consciousness of the same I am that we all are. But we don't hear that because the brain edits that out and only the label. So we identify ourselves by the label. Well, I'm not your label, you're not my label, so let's clash and try to convert each other to each other's label, right? And that's the thing that I think has really messed up the world as it is. But I think we're in a process of healing it.
I would agree. I mean, that brings us back to, well, what is that? It's words, letters, numbers, symbols being revealed through the DNA strand just most recently in the last 20, 30 years as an identifier that there is a message quite clearly within the substance at a subatomic level. This human flesh and blood is vibratory and is oscillating at a certain frequency. And through that sound, I love that. I mean, I use sound as a very ancient vehicle because that's what it is. And you command maestro over the neurology in your body using things like the vagus nerve as the entry point through sound to manipulate, or furthermore to dominate or command, or take your attention to this self-evident realization from that visceral level. And, I mean, I'm sitting behind an 81-inch gong. I have over 100 gongs in my temple out here.
Beautiful.
And, over 100 crystal bowls, other things, ancient ritual tools of cultivation, of remembrance. And these are all incredible examples of that. And it should be. It's like remembering yourself is to return to the simplicity of ritual, your communion with that now moment, the primordial mother, God, Tao, Buddha, universe. That is for you. I agree with you when people they get misguided with saying I am, and it ends in the mind, and it no longer
Yes.
becomes transmuted as a visceral somatic release that you have a knowing. It's just all talk and not knowing because they're staying there. If you're thinking you're not knowing, if you're knowing, you are feeling, and that feeling is that connection. Whereas, people stay in the head, and unless it's transmuted through the physical flesh as a validated tuning fork, it's not realized. And that's part of accessing that resonance and maintaining it so that you can have a repeatable experience that can be validated by you. This happened, and this was the result. When I am in servitude, when I am selfless, this is evidence of this now moment. I'm not thinking about what will I acquire from my action or inaction to experience the now moment. This is all something that everyone can, as you would say, contemplate, reflect on as part of their journey of their humanness. And when they go through that journey and they reflect on it, they contemplate the outcome. There are many events throughout their life experiences that are quite self-evident, where I have been in servitude, I have been selfless, and you know about this. You have sampled this. You have experienced it. Now it's be able to maintain that resonance through vehicles like sound and instruments that will just percolate and oscillate this incredible union. This is what it's about. What say you to that, my dear friend?
Whew, you're singing my song. I like it. I like it a lot. When I when I got on this idea of sound and vibration, um, I had read about a frequency that biochemists were using to repair DNA, and it was 528 hertz, which has become kind of famous around the world. But this is 25 years ago that I came onto this information. And the 528 would sound, because the brain generalizes sound, it would sound like on the piano a C above middle C, but that's not the frequency of that. And in the world of frequencies, a few frequencies would make a huge difference. So I thought in my work at that time of activating DNA, I needed that frequency. And I could not find it in any Western instruments. I couldn't find it anywhere in anything that had a 528C to it. And someone called me out of the blue, I hadn't heard of for a long time, and said, I don't know why I'm calling you, but I just see what you were doing. And I was telling them, and they said, you can have a tuning fork made in any frequency you want. Now, the only thing I knew about a tuning fork was as a child, we had a piano, and this guy would come out every year with a little tuning fork, a 440 tuning fork, and tune a piano. That's all I knew about a tuning fork. But then I found out that there was a place in New York that made tuning forks. So I decided to have a 528 tuning fork. So during that time, I also found there was also another set of frequencies that went with the 528 that was called original solfeggio frequencies that had been lost at the time that the Catholic Church moved from Latin to English and revamped and the training of Gregorian chants. And they changed all of that into more Western type of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Do became a deer. Deer became a part of the Julie Andrews in the field with the kids, and all of that kind of washed it all down, because Western music is called 12-tone temperament, which is closed octave, right? C to C, closed octave. C to C, closed octave. Now, Pythagoras, who was an absolute genius of his time in sound and mathematics, said, let's not close the octave and see what happens. So when he opened the octave, he caught the spiral in the universe that went up to the planets, and all of them was sound, which we have proved in NASA. I've got a set of NASA tapes where they have taped what's out there in space. They thought it was empty space between here and the planets. It wasn't, it was sound. Sounds like bowls bouncing off each other. So he brought in the sound of the spheres, it's called, like that. So I thought, what is between where that circle didn't close and where it uh, overshot itself? And I thought there's something missing in there that we need to know. Well, I believe it was these six solfeggio frequencies. That is the turn of time space, three-dimensional space time, four, and how it curves to catch the spiral of multidimensionalism. So whereas the fundamentalists see the end of the world, I see it as a curve. And so
spooky action, my friend.
Yes, very good. So I decided to get all those forks, some just inside me, some inner wisdom inside of me said, just get them all. So I got those forks and started looking at them. And they were all in Latin. What is called do was called ut quintlaxis, or the ut fork. And they were all interesting frequencies, which turned out to be frequencies that all end up as base root frequencies of 3, 6, or 9. Now, Tesla says when man understands 3, 6, and 9, he'll have a key to the universe. So no matter what I did with those frequencies, if I went up in harmonics or went down in harmonics, it didn't matter. It never lost 3, 6, and 9, those tuning forks. So when I held those forks in my hand, I knew I stood at a fork in the road, which is the name of my book, by the way, A Fork in the Road. And that changed everything for me 25 years ago. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do with these forks? And I started getting downloads of ways in which that we can use these forks in the different phases and classes that I taught for 25 years. So this 528 also matches the heart chakra. And I think that's important because you mentioned something a while ago I don't want to let go by, and that's the pineal gland. That's another thing that I heard about back in the 70s. In the 70s, somebody gave me a little cassette tape of somebody talking about the pineal gland, however you want to pronounce it, the pineal gland, and it resonated with me, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And then I learned that it was one of the most important glands in the brain, is actually the pineal gland, that kind of has gone down in humans, but it's being activated in humans again. And being pine coned, it kind of vibrates a little bit on the end. And I thought, something's going on here. Something has woken up in the human mind itself and the human brain, in which is going to be very important as a spiritual, physical part of ourselves. I didn't know what that meant. Now, I was pastoring a little church in East Texas that was very strict, Bible only. And I wanted to talk about this, but I didn't know how to do it because they wouldn't let me say anything that wasn't in the Bible. And so I was praying and meditating, whatever I did in those days. And it came to me, look up all the coniferous trees of the Old Testament. Now that's a gnosis moment. Who would have thought of that? And all those boring verses of the Old Testament about the box tree and the fir tree and all of this are coniferous trees. I started looking them up in Hebrew, and they all started talking about consciousness and raising the mind and enlightenment. And I realized that this is how I was going to present it to them out of the Bible, is by using these symbolisms of these trees. Now, let me say this to you. Why I think the pineal gland is so important to activate, which I had a tuning fork to do that, by the way, is because I think that, now this is my take, it may not be everybody's, and I'm going to use terminology as metaphor, but I believe a new dimension of energy is breaking through our third dimensional, fourth dimensional assimilated world that we live in. And I think that's what's causing the chaos, because of the breakdown of all of these systems that we have made in the third dimension. That includes education, religion, finance, medicine. Everything is shaky right now because it's coming apart at the molecular level, so to speak, and moving into chaos, much like a caterpillar breaks down to become the butterfly, right? And that's alchemy or metamorphosis. And we're living that. And we're not here by accident to do this. We are here to assist this new thing. And you used the term a while ago, and I would use the term to stabilize the new norm. because we can come in and out of it, but how do we stabilize all these wonderful truths that we're sharing with people, that I hear you saying, that myself and so many others are saying? It can't be just another belief system. It can't be end up as another religion or something that we go to once in a while. It has to become a part of the norm of ourselves. So breakthrough is causing breakdown. And I was asked some years ago in meditation, do you want to try to fix what's breaking down, or you want to work with what's breaking through? I didn't know what that meant, but somewhere out of the source of my being, out of the inner being of myself, I said, I'm going to work with breakthrough. And that's when the tuning fork showed up in a way in which I could start creating new portals. So if I'm correct at all, and I'm not saying I'm 100% absolute, but if I'm correct, and I'm going to call it 5D, just to give it a name. That's different from time space of Einstein's idea. So let's just call it 5D, which is the next energy that's coming in to wake another up, a part of our consciousness that's went asleep, or we've shut off in ourselves, that's becoming awake, is coming in and causing all of these systems of 3D to go into this chaos, which we've got to see it as a more spiritual thing than, oh God, what did we do wrong? I thought we'd be in a better place than we are now. I think we're exactly where we need to be spiritually right now. And I think we need to accept this chaos as the opportunity for alchemy to work for us, to take us to the next level of our evolution, for a better term. And I'm a great believer in creation and evolution. In fact, I made up a word called crelution because I'm a crelutionist in that way. So I think this new energy, which I believe is 5D photon light information, is coming in, but it's got to bypass the ego mind, because the ego mind will misinterpret it again and bring it down in frequency. But here's what I've been given. I'd like to share with you and see how you feel about it. It's going to come this time through the heart portal. It's going to shoot up into the brain to the pineal gland, which is going to vibrate the information without the filters of the five senses or the intellect of man, and keep it pure. But the pineal gland, as you know, can be also that which it makes chemicals or of light into the brain, and that's why we have a moment of enlightenment. So I think that this whole thing of changing consciousness is going to come from a higher dimension, enter in through the heart, given to the pineal gland, and the pineal is going to vibrate it in pure language of vibration, that we're going to get it for ourselves without any filters. I hope that makes some sense to you, but just feel me.
Elementary, my dear Watson. Elementary.
I need a drink on that.
Yeah, it's just like as Jimmy Morrison would say, break on through to the other side. I mean, there's so many crumbs that come from just the humanistic expression of the timeline. So you look at cycles of a 10-year clip of how the human evolution has changed just in the last 100 years. From Albert Einstein being freaked out with the spooky action of bending of reality to furthermore embodying what Max Planck would call a Planck unit of energy, which is really how people perceive this entanglement, or furthermore, what someone would call the 0 point, the super glue of reality, how things are all being able to operate instantly at once as a collective, as a singular, as they would put it within a physics. And one of my dear friends is a physicist, and she's like, that's just so old school, the singular thing, but I think it's cute. I think you should keep using it. Well, within physics, it's another language that is quite so new age, in my opinion. I'm moving in the grounds of very ancient oracle bone reading, pictographs, the trappings of the 7 generations of change within the Chinese landscape that would be represented with a simplified and traditional, Cantonese and Mandarin. These are languages that are so ancient, just as you gravitate to the very seeds of, the Bible through Latin. There's so much power behind that, the visceral experience.
Yes.
And you don't even have to understand it. You just know that it is the truth. And so furthermore, when you start experiencing this stuff and you do get to realize that, there is that oscillating effect and that activation of this alchemical fun factory through these experiences, and you get this activation from the heart center, which furthermore, we talk about the void being the primordial mother. From the void, you create the seed of creation within the primordial womb, which then goes from conception to creation of human life over a nine-point cycle, which would be reflected to the very numerology that you speak of within Tesla's perception of reality, 3, 6, and 9. That cycle of 9 is the highest point of ascension for a Taoist, and it is the point where we reflect on the concentration of the energy potential, and it comes in the seed of a diamond, the hard point that is revealed. That seed is that center Vesica point. And so all of a sudden you create possibility, opportunity that is coming from this void that we speak of, and that void generates this oscillating effect of yin and yang, this simplicity of contracting and expanding. And what we need to remind ourselves is man is not like that. And from one of my teachers, the Jade Emperor, his exact words are quite simple. When you believe, when you know you are not of this body, what can harm you? Nothing.
Yeah.
And so furthermore, you move into this past the simplicity of what the body is evoking from that visceral feeling to that knowing that becomes self-evident when you're able to create. You mentioned the 528 frequency. It's such a beautiful thing when you start talking about frequential results, right? So within that, we talk about the journey. Someone by the name, I think, David Hawkins had this consciousness scale that he used as an offering for his observation of what, consciousness is. Now, within a Taoist path, I know I've been measuring my brain waves for quite some time. I'm a gamma guy. I don't know. I just stay there. And so for bear witness to the truth, blind faith becomes realized when I bear witness to that. I stand between 40 to 100 to 400 hertz that I've measured my own brainwaves at. And within that state, guess what? I witness physical healing. I witness mental, emotional healing. And we're not talking about stuff that's conceptualized within a fleeting moment, a transitory moment of, oh, I think I felt something or no. No, I will see physical flesh return back to its default in state. I've seen a gangrenous tissue. That was my first little breaking into the other side 30 years ago as a Taoist seeker before becoming a priest, was witnessing a physical healing. And it was a gangrenous foot that went back to pink in color within 40 minutes. And I was just like, I'm sorry, but, this is the reality, just like Oliver. May I have some more, sir? You would like more, boy? Yes, may I have some more? And of course, you replicate that oscillating effect of the mirroring within this electromagnetism. The universe will share with you what it is that you're resonating at. So if that's your desire, which it is mine, to witness physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing, I will get more of the same. And there's nothing wrong with saying in that resonance. I see many spiritual teachers, and over my conscious creation of the last 32 years, that, two gurus. I've had three people I've known that have been aware of their energetic potential and, can levitate, which is a supernatural sort of state. Okay, that's great. You can levitate. That's very exciting. Two of them were Indonesian gurus from the jungles of Indonesia. One was one of my students. And then they're like, hang on a second. Well, if one of your students is doing it, why can't you do it? Because it doesn't excite me. I can give you the formula for creation, but that doesn't excite me. It's not what I gravitate to. It doesn't make me all warm and fuzzy inside. It doesn't return me to the primordial mother where I am no place, no person, no thing. but the now moment. That charge that you and I are receiving right now, that chill, that expansive, oscillating effect, is that knowing. And of course, it comes in the trappings of, clairsenses, mediumship, channeling, however you want to, decipher this experience. You will be given these sensory perceptions to make it more clear to you and to share with others, to raise their own spiritual consciousness, to be in the now moment. This is the selflessness, the servitude that returns you back to that knowing. And that's the beautiful effects of what we speak of. So when it comes to frequentially, there is no limit. You are abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And you can start with the seed of this is how it's transmuted within this hertz. But in essence, when you're all things and nothing at the same time, we have found the secret source, my dear friend. And it becomes experiential. You are able to show it. You show yourself, you show others, and that raises their frequency. That raises that. So we're returning to chaos, from chaos to order, which is two of the same. You are able to share that. And, from a Schumann resonance perspective, you look at the human expression, and we talk about that center point, that heart center that you spoke of. This is part of, within the void comes the creation. So for a primordial mother is a creation of the yang energy, which you were talking about, the masculine and the feminine. And from that, the void creates the sun. The sun is a transmuted, elevated expression of the primordial mother, which would come in that yang form. And from that transmutation, the frequency that is admitted within planet Earth, the magnetic field presents the electromagnetic or light spectrum of what we call the rainbow. And that rainbow center point is right here, which would be reflected in an indigenous practice as a chakra, as we would call within Taoism a dantian, an energy elixir, and a center point to have that realized. And that's where it's so magical. And then you go, another epiphany, another moment, holy moly. And then that coherence that you create with the brain within the heart within the brain, that synchronistic neuroplasticity that links the brain, the heart, and the gut. Yes. And all of a sudden you're off to the races. You are now getting the ciphering realization of that. What say you?
Oh. I think when all of this came, it was so popular about the secret thing and the law of attraction. I think they should change it to the law of resonance. Yeah. I don't know what I want to attract, but I know I want to bring to me what resonates with that higher true aspect of self that I am. And I think that's an important thing. Oh, you said so many good things. I like your language so much and understand a lot of what you're saying. Not everything, but I get it. I get the essence. I get what's behind, and that's what I'm listening for. I'm listening what's behind the words, because we're using our mental capacity and our bodies to communicate until real communication is.
Yeah,
I think that's coming.
I have that inflection point where I always refer to things of pop culture, things that create the desire for cultivating imagination, which is really the portal to the void. Is that imagination? Is it what you create from that? I have reflect on a movie from the 70s called The Warriors. I don't know whether you saw it. Can you dig it? And it really is one of those can you dig it moments. Can you feel it? Oh, yes, I can. As Boston would say, it's more than a feeling. And you are just embodying that. And that's part of your own admission by saying, listen, there's a lot of things I understand and the things I don't understand. It doesn't matter. I'm feeling it. I know. I've got the resonance. I'm attuning to it, just like that tuning fork, just like that bowl, that a gong or any instrument that will regulate that frequency and harness it and harness that. That's that resonance, being able to harness that and make it transmuted and realized now. And I think that's the beautiful part of what we're speaking of, is it's a universal thing. You return to it, and it's not to dismiss the ritual. It's not to dismiss the unity or even the individuality that comes with the energy potential of a spirit, an entity. They're all come to that full circle, that place. God's frequency is not Jesus's frequency. Jesus' frequency is not the Tao's frequency. Buddha's frequency is not, universe. People need to honor and value the riches. What we call absorbing the riches is absorbing this ritual and returning you to your knowing of who you are.
Yeah, there you go.
That makes sense?
That goes totally makes sense. Yeah. Something did come to mind now. I forgot it, but I wanted to deal with that. One of the things, one of the quotes that really changed a lot of things for me at a certain level of my journey was a quote, and we think it's Einstein, but it was Planck or one of the early fathers of quantum physics. To me, quantum physics has answered so much of metaphysics. At one time metaphysics was really out there, but it's not so much anymore because of the depth that we've gone into the more less reality of matter itself and whatever. But it said that about matter, there is no matter. About matter, you have been wrong. There's only energy vibrating at such a dense frequency that it's perceptible to the five senses. Now, that disproves this whole thing of Eastern idea of Maya or illusion or whatever, which so many people in the West have had such a hard time dealing with that, because they confuse delusion with illusion. They don't know the difference sometimes, and they think we're talking about just making up things that are not there. You also mentioned imagination, which in the religion I was in, I was very much against imagination. And even the Bible says, bring down the imagination of the mind. It's bad. But I love Einstein's quote, which is stop analyzing so much and imagination is greater than knowledge. That's it. And when I got the tuning forks and Soma Energetics, it really was using my imagination that I got the downloads, right? So I think using imagination is just going on beyond the boundaries of the five senses and how that it has to fit a belief system, or it has to fit how we analyze it or how we perceive it. And if we keep doing that, we're not going to grow in consciousness. We're not going to wake up. But I think the fact that that's more and more what people are doing is going beyond the boundaries they have set for themselves and going into that playground of the teacher who said, unless we come as a child, we shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. So let's just use that for a moment. Because when I didn't know what to do with the tuning forks, and a woman showed up out of Manhattan because she heard me and flew all the way to Ohio where I was talking and said, you got to use the tuning forks. I said, I don't know what to do. And I said to her, I don't know how to use them. And then she kept on at me, and I said, well, meet me at 2:00 and we'll play with the tuning forks. Now, when I got into that play area of myself, where I was willing to step out of what I thought I only knew into the unknown part of myself, I started getting the downloads of what to do with it. And I really encourage people out there to use whatever tool they choose, meditation, contemplation, or whatever it is, to kind of play in the ground of potential possibilities. Because it's like a stillness that's become awakened. It's like a lake that is still, but the wind is blowing the waves up. And now these possibilities are so much easier for us to connect to. And I think this is going to move us along much quicker toward a collective awakenment of ourselves as human beings.
Amen to that, my dear friend. And that really is. It's like you come to that realization from what is potential, what is possibility, to an emotion, hope, belief system, then knowing. It's sort of a progression. This is part of the path that you become one with all this, and tuning forks or any way of a vibratory expression, to me, is really evident as a way to become or commune with the universe as a whole. And there's so many different paths to do that. There's always a million ways up the mountain. I always remind people, if you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. We are the same. We are one.
There you go. Well put. Well put. You
And
know, the tuning fork thing attracted me because it was coming at a time that technology was exploding, right? But yet I was using a tuning fork, which seemed like so primitive and so old. But I thought it's such a raw vibration. You know, getting it through the internet or getting it through a recording is fine, but it's filtered. But a tuning fork has no emotion to it. It doesn't, if I hear songs, for instance, I get an emotion or a memory. Oh, I was breaking up. I was this, that, and another back in 78, 79, whatever. But a tuning fork, you go nowhere. You go nowhere because there's not a connection to your emotional body whatsoever. So it's very present to feel a tuning fork and vibration. Plus, and maybe I'm showing my age here, you didn't have to plug it into the grid. That I liked. Your gong. Other things like that that are pure instruments for vibration and sound to me are so much more intense and powerful to move us in the world of vibration that is not coming through us just electrically. So that's just my feeling about it. That why I kept to tuning forks and didn't put everything onto electronics and whatever with it, but I just kept holding that little tuning fork. I held it in the silence of nothing, which was everything. And then when I disrupted it with a tapped it and made that sound come alive, it vibrated. And it vibrated the nothing into something, a possibility that if anybody who was using the tuning fork was open to, they could experience an expansion of their experience, whether it's a healing, physically, mentally, or whatever it is that their intention could be seen as manifested because of the fact that nothing vibrated into the potential of something.
That return, the return. And there's a point of no return that people don't understand, the detachment of the attachment. And people go, what? Oh, my goodness, a paradox that's blowing my mind. How is that possible? Well, that's the very nature of reality. When you come to that realization, all bets are off, my dear friend.
Right, right. So true.
And it comes from that mastery. You have to experience it. It has to be realized. It's all conceptual until otherwise noted. You know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. And, you know, simple forms of mastery or entering into the conscious and unconscious process comes from foundational infancy in relation to things like hypnosis. It's like, I think everyone should understand how easy that is to access a now moment and how powerful that can be in relation to commanding your attention. And you realize that you master that more, you solidify that more through the cultivational process, and then it becomes realized. I mean, when you can take something, and I've got 6 kids, I've taught 5 of them hypnosis at the beginning process, and they're learning, most clairvoyant skills, i.e., remote viewing and reading auras and all that kind of good stuff. But then furthermore, you bring me to a point where you mention the senses, the 5 senses. That's a starting point. I can literally tell you, I could say something to you. You can hear it in your mind. You can say it in your mind. You could speak it in your mind. There's 3 more right there. Bam. We're at 8 right now, and we're just cultivating. Senses are limitless, abundant, timeless, infinite. And you get to create that from that portal of imagination, and it can be validated through that visceral experience. When you start to master the alchemical process, it becomes true in its nature for you. And furthermore, if you want to share that and enlighten people, you must master it to a point where something as simplistic as mirror neurons. I mean, it's so easy. If I want to go and understand things using a scientific lens, I get the hey, daddy, read me a story to go to bed. So I've got 6 kids. They all sort of stay together. The youngest is not so much. She's very easy to tune into. The other 5, they're like, oh no, you're not reading me a story, daddy. What are you talking about? You cheat. You see, because I'll just go instantly into the breath, and then I will mirror and replicate the breath and just by the time I say once upon a time, oh, good night, everyone's asleep and off to daddy watching Netflix. So you would tune into that frequency, right?
Right.
I mean, it can't get any more simple than that. And this is that beautiful union that you create. And when you understand how to do that, it's like, the old simplicity of mesmer or hypnosis as being some ominous thing. The realization is you get more manipulative tools like NLP and linguistics in of itself. It can be used for good or evil, depends on where you're at in your own reality and what you want to do with it. But be mindful that when you're emotional, you're suggestible. The simplicity of that's the entry level, and it takes nothing more than something at a periphery level, and someone can play with your very psyche, your very consciousness, because of information. Everything is information, and how they enter into the unconscious state would be, all of a sudden people get very perplexed when I say all thoughts of your mind are not yours, and they're like, well, whose are they if they're not mine? We have just started on a journey of something very magnificent for your own self-realization, because this is how things are created, is that fact that until otherwise noted, you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And that merging and that union of the electromagnetism, the unified as one, is that unity, that perfection, that primordial mother. Then you have imperium, then you have command over this very now moment, or some people might call it dominion, direction, whatever you want to perceive it as. But until otherwise noted, it stays in the head. It no longer transmutes to the body, and it's not realized as a tangible material experience that can be validated by not just the seeker, but an observer. And that raises their consciousness by, whoa, that really took place. This is mystical, magical, metaphysical, the culmination of the two. What say you on that?
Well, you really give me a new thought here to think about the five senses as gateways, not as just an ego thing to misperceive an unreality, but it's a way in which, if I use them correctly and as open portals to manifesting the unseen, in other words, I need to see. I need to hear.
Yes.
Right? So thank you for that. You give me a whole different perspective there. I think I needed a little adjustment in. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we use within the ancient scripture we call the Tao Te Ching, which is basically the book of gnosis, the book of knowing your way, your truth, your absolute truth. That's really what it means. And so we use this as what we define as the magical register. So I commune with my teacher, Lao. I transcribed the 2024 version of the Tao Te Ching and recently published it. And it is a communion that you have with the divinity of the primordial mother. And it's realized. So it's a reflection. So every verse, there's 81 verses within the Tao Te Ching. Each verse is a mirroring effect of perfection, that the seeker, the seeker or the reader of that scripture now falls into this dimensional shift, these 81 frequencies within each incantation, which is part of the magical register. It has a frequency, it has a color, it has a shape that merge you as one with the primordial mother. You remember instantly when you read it. You're like, holy moly, it's now.
I like that. I think now, because my language I grew up with was Bible, scriptures, and all that, I think that's what happened with me that made it uniquely different. Is I saw the scriptures as a gateway into something, a deeper information. I
Yeah.
never got the literalism. Even Jesus or Yeshua, I don't see him as the historical. I'm not going to argue whether there's a Jesus or not, but who is Jesus as a symbolism for a part of me?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I've made Jesus that part of me that's awake in my dream. It is me awake in my dream. It is me that can do abundantly above and beyond what I ever was taught or thought I could do. So I've used it in that way as a gateway into a deeper vibrational understanding or meaning of it. And that's where I've come from, which a lot of Christians don't like because I'm not a literalist, you know. But it opened up a way for me to get to a deeper vibrational frequency of what is behind the symbolism.
And then you go down that path of Christ consciousness.
Christ
Furthermore,
consciousness.
Yeshua as being the mystic path of Jesus Christ, or furthermore, the understanding that the fear of the general consensus of Christianity would take you and separate you from your Gnostic path, which, I've come across many Christians that all of a sudden have to redefine what their idea of energy is because they're so afraid of the potential of it. They've been feared into separating. And the second I go, well, okay, you don't believe in energy. I understand that. I accept that. Why is it that 2 seconds ago you said, I got a feeling I didn't like the energy of that guy and I didn't? And they're like, holy crap.
I had a bad vibe or something like that.
I did. I had that terminology. I used it and they go, oh shit. I am really, I'm using this universal understanding, yet I'm not identifying with it, even though it's a part of me. And they have that aha moment. Elementary, my dear Watson.
Exactly. Well put. Yeah.
Well, this has been delightful having this communion with you and unifying this and oscillating back and forth with all these incredible experiences that we're both on the journey of, and helping people remember and bringing them to this merging point of Gnostic realization, which is really, in my opinion, the purpose of a Taoist path. And it all comes in all different forms. Ultimately, if you go deeper in Taoism, there's a level of the humanistic expression of us being ambassadors to planet Earth. By raising the frequency, you help the individual return to the singular, which would be refined as the empathy, the heartbeat of everything. And when you attune to that, you realize all is one, one is all.
One of my favorite scriptures happens to be in Psalms 82. And it talks about why the world's off course. It says, know ye not ye are gods. And the word gods there is Elohims, which I trace back to be representative or ambassadors of me. But it says, and because you are that, why do you lay down and die like the princes of the world? Know you not you are the children of the Most High. And that's always been such a strong little 8 verses to me of Psalms 82 that I have used that so much to try to tell people that we are the expression of the one individualized and showing up here on this point of earth of this and this point of the body that you're in is your focal point in time where eternity finds its place in time.
That's set on point. That leads me to one of my teachers, the Jade Emperor. We use this incantation, which instantly enters the mother. A power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering.
Wow.
And we were just oscillating right there. That was profound. And this is the stuff that the magic epiphany that takes place with that visceral knowing that is second to none.
Well, I want to thank you for having a platform for people like myself that can have a voice to join with the other voices that are coming together at this time to really speed this awakening experience up in people, because I think there is a lot of people out there ready. They're ready for the experience and not just the knowledge and the intellectualism of it, but I think people really want to have an experience.
Oh, amen to that, my brother. Amen. And so furthermore, we're going to close with, I'm going to put all your social media, all access points of ways to find you and your teachings and your relationship with many other offerings that you have within your your little universe, and you could speak on that briefly. But before we close that out, I'm going to ask you one last question. What is your definition of consciousness? Spiritual consciousness. Spiritual consciousness.
Well, that's the age-old question that I think people are trying to define. I believe consciousness is when the unconsciousness wakes up to itself. My whole definition of God is a non-local, undefinable consciousness interacting with itself, and we are the itself that it's acting with.
I love that. I love that. I've done hundreds of podcasts. I've never got the same answer, as I should not, because
Sure.
every spiritual consciousness is what we call a facet of the diamond of perfection, which is perfection manifest. So in closing, would you like to share with the audience? I want all my disciple students, 126 subscribers, everyone to go out and embody what David is sharing with the world. And furthermore, let's lead with more carrots, more direction, GPS, where we find you on the interweb to make that materialized.
Sure. Thank you. Well, your listeners can find more at David Hulse, that's Hulse, like your pulse with an H.com. That's davidhulse.com. And there they will find out the Academy for Spiritual Awakening, which is, I've created what I call a sanctuary, a safe place for seeking higher consciousness as well as spiritual enlightenment. I'm trying to create a space for non-judgment and resources to find answers to people's questions. And I believe the answers in themselves, but I believe we can facilitate people and direct people to that place inside of themselves. We're also trying to be a supportive community where we can have thought-provoking conversation and teachings. So I've taken all my teachings of many, many years, starting with Bible 101. I deal with the issues of sin and hell and all that. One of the first little books I wrote was Hell Yes or Hell No, because I need to find out what is this stuff and where does it come from? So for the people that's kind of coming out of that Christian literalism, but they're kind of still hanging on to it, because even when we come out of it, it doesn't come out of us. It ends up in our first chakra. So I want to deal with that there. And then I have classes on body, mind, spirit, which, by the way, I believe that body, mind, spirit translates today into everything's energy. And so a lot of that. So there's going to be a lot on there. Your listeners can get what's called a free awakening sampler that offers a preview of the spiritual courses, audio books, meditations, and community. So again, you can do that at www.davidhulse.com. And thank you so much again for this opportunity. You're amazing. You're such an amazing soul and being. And I love where you vibrate.
I thank you, my dear friend. I'm very grateful for us to be reunited, and it feels so good. And with that said, I want to thank you, my dear friend. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and seafood, Taoist Master San Qing, and I'll see you on the next one, guys.
Thank you.